Well, Eric, kicking things off here this week, starting off on a little bit of a cooler note, not just here in Iowa. It seems like a lot of places we're experiencing some cooler temperatures here as we're transitioning in this fall period. And is that indicative of, are we kind of seeing a pattern change? Because we were talking a lot about warmer and drier conditions throughout much of the US earlier.
Yeah, if you look at this map, which shows you all of September and the first 13 days of October, most of the country was very, very warm, especially the northern plains, the southwest, the west. And that was good, honestly, because that took us way above our average GDDs, which we were behind in those areas, especially in the northern plains, and got the crop to finish. And why I think that's so important is that now we're getting into that normal volatile fall pattern. And we've already got freeze warnings out, frost watches out for most of Iowa, as you can see here. And we're going to watch this dip pretty far to the south. This is a map I make every day, just kind of looking at where there's the chance for frost. And it's pretty extensive over the US, but that's kind of typical of October, right? We start to get these just big swings. I mean, you could have a week where your temperature swing is 50 degrees from your lowest temperature to your warmest, even higher than that at times. In addition to that, though, this week, one of the other big things we're going to watch out for is some very late week into the weekend, heavy strong winds in the midsection of the country, maybe 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts. And so if we're not getting much precipitation out of this, then there's going to be some risk of wildfires. But with all that volatile temperature pattern, just take a look at the next 7 days of snow. We got snow in the Rockies, snow in the Cascades, some snow in northern parts of like New England, in the Northeast, and so things are changing up. But I think the places that really want the moisture are not getting it. I'm talking specifically about the very dry parts of the Midwest, where this system very late this week is going to just sit here over the four corner states and leave this weekend, heading into early next week up toward Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And initially, it could bring in some better rain here into the plains, but there's a lot of zeros on this map through this particular region. Now, before I walk you through just a couple of those details, I want to point out that in the Atlantic right now, we've got about a 50% chance of developing a system coming in this direction, but there's a big blocking high out ahead of this and some much stronger winds in the jet stream that'll probably keep it away. And there's about a 30 to 50% chance of another system developing down here in what we call the West Caribbean gyre. But I still don't know that this is going to be able to get back up into the Caribbean, or excuse me, into the Gulf either. So he's got some areas to be watching here overall. But back to the bigger narrative, this is what the pattern looks like. For the next 15 days, the jet's hanging out a bit farther to the north. It's kind of running around these broader troughs here. So when we get cooler air, it comes in for a couple of days and then we warm right back up again. That seems to be the way this pattern's taking off. And my biggest concern is that while, yes, that system may come out of Colorado and head off in this direction, we've got a large area that's from eastern Texas through the Ohio Valley that's not expected to see much in the way of rainfall at all. And I want to be very clear that the rains that we are projecting that could get into the central part of the United States are not going to be enough to bust this drought. I mean, this drought has been building for 50 plus days. You just can't undo it with one event, especially when your subsurface soil moisture values are as low as these. And our big river systems like the Mississippi, which this morning is already back down to 6 feet below low stage. When you have that much of a deficit in water and the whole hydrology of the system, it's not something that just gets corrected with a couple of storm systems. Many of us that are in this really, really dry area and through here will be waiting on all of winter into spring's moisture before we start to see recovery in this, which is something a lot of us are concerned about drought carrying over. So here's a quick forecast. All right. This is the high res NAM playing today. Let's get that reset. There we go. And as we watch, there's a low curling over the Great Lakes that could be bringing in some lake enhanced precip, not snow, but rain. Other than that, what you're going to be watching for is this guy over here, this low coming into the west. That's going to be the one that could possibly dive into the four corner states as soon as the end of this week. But watch this. I know it's kind of small on your screen, but there's one, two, three, four, five models predicting the weather here for rainfall over the next 7 days, and they all kind of have the same look to them, and that's going to be our biggest struggle because the regions of the country that have very low chances of picking up any moisture are seen here. So take note of California. We should be getting toward the wet season in the West. We're not there yet. Take a look at the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, the Mississippi Valley, then the Southeast. Now, these folks are more than happy to not have any more rain come in there after the four hurricanes. Three hurricanes and a tropical system moved into this area. that I expect the drought to continue to build here. I am watching this very carefully. So watch the low curl up in the northeast. Watch the high pressure build in behind it. This is what's going to be bringing the really cold air in middle of this week. But that high eventually makes it all the way over to here. And what that does is, can you see these faint lines? These are isobars. They're really tightly spaced, and that's going to open up a wind out of the south and southwest while this low goes and curls up over the four corner states. And you can see the low curling up there. But out ahead of that, the end of this week, really strong winds. And then some point early next week, that low will leave Colorado. See it leaving there on Monday and go right toward your home state of Iowa. And I'm just concerned as it leaves for the risk of severe storms in this area. But again, we'll be talking about that next Monday as it's happening. So that's pretty far out there in the forecast. So what about week 2? Well, you can see 4 different forecasts of it. The most aggressive for Midwest rain is the artificial intelligence. But I can't really say that I've got a lot of trust in the week 2 forecast until I see where that Colorado low ends up going. But I want you to at least see the maps here. I feel much more confident about the temperatures. I mean, take a look at the high temperatures, excuse me, the low temperatures today. And as I play you from today into Tuesday and then Wednesday, that's a cold one. That's the frost line there in white. But I mentioned the pattern's going to be volatile already by Friday into Saturday when the winds pick back up. Your overnight lows in Iowa recover all the way back over to the 50s after seeing these frost events coming through here. And the high temperatures do the same thing. Here's Monday's highs. Okay, let's get the date back up there. Here we go. Into Tuesday, Wednesday. Look at the heat coming out of Montana. There it is. It's already in the Midwest by Thursday, Friday. So we're talking about high temperatures alone seeing, 30-degree swings over the next 7 days. Getting out there and looking at, the week 2 pattern, I'm going to focus a lot on this. Models are keying in on a pattern change. They're starting to drop low pressure and colder air into here versus where it's been for the last month, which has been here in the Gulf of Alaska or here in the Bering Sea or the Chukchi Sea. That is something different, and that could start to introduce better chances of moisture as we go forward toward the end of this month. So Dawson, a lot to cover just in the next week, but you can see how this pattern evolving could really influence things for us later and hopefully buy us just a little bit of moisture before we get into winter to help break some of this drought we're dealing with.
Yeah, and just at the end of that, a little bit about what you talked to is still seems kind of supportive what you've been trying to allude to the past couple of weeks, right? Because you're talking about how, okay, maybe we're going to have a little bit more of a drier October. However, the back half, trying to break this drought, we might trend a little bit wetter here moving forward.
Yeah, and the CPC picked up on this as well. So they saw the same kind of pattern shift that I was talking about. Their new end of October, first week of November outlook is very much in line with what I just said. So if we get troughs in the western part of North America, they run up over ridges that are here. Now, that's why we see drier up these coasts. But if you get the flow coming out of the southwest, we have better chances of getting moisture in through here. But I want to be very clear, even though I can show you the Climate Prediction Center's forecast and then the ECMWF extended forecast showing wetter in this area, this is not the kind of wet that ameliorates a drought. We've got too much of a deficit to overcome, even with a good month of precipitation. And the problem is it's fall. Fall is our driest time of year anyway. So we're not looking at this and thinking too much about, busting a drought right away here in the month of November. But any moisture is worth talking about. So that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me too of, even though, yeah, we don't get a lot of drought busting rain here in the fall. Yeah, it always brings me back to that comment of hearing you say a while ago is that it just seems like a drought like this just does not really break gently. So it just might take larger systems or just continual systems to do a little bit of some improvements here.
Yeah, and to be honest, the thing we need the most right now is an absolutely terrible winter. I mean, like a really, really bad one. Just come through and rip this all up and toss in numerous systems and make everybody mad. I mean, they'll be happy come next May if we can get this to come through. But, speaking of winter, this is kind of interesting. We have a La Nina going. I'll show you that in a few minutes. Winters with La Ninas are typically wet here and here. They're drier across the south. That's what typical is. And they tend to split the country. If you're north of that line, it's cold. If you're south of that line, it's typically warmer than average. But we tend to have more punctuating cold air events that come through versus when we have in El Nino. And right now, this is what's going on. We've got a La Nina that's trying. But I'm mostly interested in this guy right here. and the interaction between that and colder water developing in this area. I think that's going to be bigger for the pattern for this winter than anything. A lot to be watching, but yeah, La Nina will be a major part of the discussion going into this fall and winter.
For sure. And kind of moving on to the South America side of things too, of course, is continuing to look at that monsoon. And now last week it seemed like, we thought we were going to open up maybe a little bit, but it didn't seem like a lot of the rains were coming throughout the week. Kind of what are we looking at this week in terms of maybe getting some monsoon moisture that farmers down there would really appreciate?
Yeah, this is a map from Saturday or no, Sunday, and this is what the monsoon looks like when it's getting going. See these little storms? I mean, they're not little, they're huge. And Brazil's a big place. But seeing that is an indication. And so we'll start to see the smoke going away very soon. The newest European model forecast is very wet in Mato Grosso, Tocantins, Goiás, Minas Gerais. These areas over here are very wet. It's a little bit drier in southern Brazil, as you can see when you look at it compared to average. But that's a region that's been wet for months. So not a problem there overall. Bigger picture is now through the end of November, I don't see any model that's trying to back away, at least any legitimate model, back away from the wetter conditions here. A bit drier, developing in the Northeast and possibly some drier in central Brazil. That would be very, excuse me, central Argentina. That'd be very normal for a La Nina, but I think we still have a lot yet to be seen here. What I do know is that they're trying, right? This is out of Mato Grosso. They finally came up out of the basement. They're almost 9% planted. They were 35% a year ago. I just think we want to know, are they going to do this? Or are they going to do like something crazy like that? So by the end of the month or the beginning of November, are we 70% planted or 90% planted? That 20% gap there could be huge when it comes to US markets and what we have to cover and all that kind of stuff. So I'll be waiting on that narrative as time goes on, but at this point, I think that's going to be the biggest unknown with their planting pace.
For sure. Hopefully that we can get some better rains here in the US here moving forward, possibly talking about that next week. So we'll be looking ahead and seeing a little bit more of those signals as they come a little bit closer. But again, for this week, thank you for your insights, Eric.
Yeah, you bet.